Welcome to the Pre-Palooza preview call with myself, Kamala Devi, Reid Mihalko, and Diana Adams. We're going to have
everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
We're going to have a juicy three-way right here in cyber world. The topic is really asking your questions and answering what's alive for those of you that have called in. We've got about 90 people signed up for this live call, and countless people will be getting the recording later. And about 40 of you wrote in really juicy questions. And so the way that we're going to do the call is I'll do an introduction for Reid and Diana, and I'll moderate the questions. And then we're going to take a little break to talk about Polypalooza, a real monumental retreat that's a festival for free lovers that's coming up in less than a month. So afterwards, we're going to have you stay on the call to get into the heart of the beast, because towards the end of the call, we're going to talk about jealousy. That seems to be what inquiring minds want to know about. And we've got some real masterful insights and answers for you on that front. So let's start off by making sure you've got your pen, your paper, you're comfortable, turn off your distractions, take a few breaths, and just get plugged into how exciting it is to have three top leaders in this field of polyamory, which is so abundantly booming right now. I think polyamory is really having its day in the sun, and people are waking up to this. This is a groundbreaking call. We're going to be talking about stuff that no one talks about. So let me start off by saying that I'm Kamala Devi. I'm the founder of Polypalooza. I'm also one of the stars of Showtime's Polyamory, Married, and Dating, which is in its second season. I'm an author, a mother, a mentor. I run a theater company. I manage 12 lovers to boot. And something I'm really proud of is that I'm long-distance lovers with both Reid and Diana. So this is really, really an intimate call. It's fun for us to have, lovers in the Bay Area as well as New York and California all represented here. So let me tell you a little bit about Diana first. So Diana Adams is a lawyer and a family mediator who's nationally recognized as an expert on polyamory, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, queer community and culture. And she's out, as a queer, bisexual, polyamorous woman. Meanwhile, she's a respected professional teaching at Ivy League law schools, and she's done groundbreaking activism and media appearances. And if you want details about Diana, go to feministoutlaw.com, or if you're interested in her legal work, go to dianaadamslaw.net. So welcome, Diana.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that beautiful introduction, sweetheart.
Good. I want to ask you first what your intention is for our Power Hour together.
My intention for this hour is to remind myself and stay present with the idea that no matter level of experience with poly, there's always room to learn. And I think it's really easy for people to view us as experts and imagine that we never feel jealousy, we never have any challenges with poly, and that it's always really easy, and that makes it seem really like an insurmountable goal to get really good at doing poly. So I want to maintain an intention of a willingness to learn myself and convey that all of us are doing really well with poly and we're always still learning.
Oh, excellent. Good, because I have some things to school you in, Diana.
Oh, great.
Okay, no, that's a beautiful reflection. Very true. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about Reid Mihalko. He's a sex and relationship expert whose workshops and lectures have been attended by close to 40,000 men and women. And he's appeared in so many media. I can't even begin to list, like Oprah's Own, and like it goes on and on. It's around the U.S. and 13 countries in at least 7 languages. So Reid's making a huge impact, through media, but also, he does powerful coaching, and one of his secret weapons and one of his powers, I just want to say, is that he, in the depth of the conflict, can always bring humor into things, and it's just such a beautiful quality because he teaches, through his role modeling and through his humor. If you want to know more about Reid, go to readaboutsex.com, but we've got the man and the legend right here with us. How are you, Reid?
I'm good. Thank you for the introduction.
Yay. So tell me your intention.
Well, my first intention is that this Power Hour count as a date, and that you and Diana both feel seen and heard, and I'm like, wow, that was a really great date. The second is really just to be of service to people and their questions. And then the third thing for me personally is for people who are interested in coming to Polypalooza or who are on the call and are already registered for Polypalooza, for them to get a sense of me personally, so that, if they come to the event, like I can hang out with them and we can drop in and, feel like we know each other more. Because then, if we're in the same space together, you guys can ask me more direct questions about information that we cover on today's call.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, if you somehow missed that, Reid, Diana, and myself will all be at Polypalooza leading and teaching, along with local lovers from San Diego, from my pod. And so a big part of this call is because, and are you in the Bay Area, Reid? I know you travel a lot. I know you're grounded in the Bay Area, but where are you right now?
I'm actually in Baltimore, Maryland right now. I was in D.C. this morning, and I'll be at the Baltimore airport today.
Excellent. Good. We have callers from all across the country. Like I said, we had like 90 people logged in to call today. And then Diana, are you in New York?
I am in New York City, yes. I just got back from D.C., where Reid and I were actually speaking together at the Woodhull Sexual Freedom Summit.
Oh, fantastic. Good. So this is like a follow-up date from having just been together.
Indeed.
So, it's fun to be talking to lovers across the country, and then we're all going to convene at Polypalooza on October 10th. And we'll stop halfway through the call and tell you a little bit about how powerful that event is. And even if you can't make it this year, and you're not going to go, just listening to what's possible for the poly community is valuable for you, because it's groundbreaking stuff. It's sort of like when you get that gay pride can happen, when you get that there is a poly paradise, it can change how you show up to your own, poly tribe and community. So we're excited to share with you that vision, whether or not you can join us. And of course, we want to push people off the fence. If you're uncomfortably straddling whether or not you should go, then come join us. So we're going to dive into the meat of the call now, which is really your questions. The first thing I want to say, I got 40 questions just for this call, and a handful of them were people's greetings, like saying, Reid, Kamala, Diana, you've changed my life, and thank you so much for the work that you've done. And it was just really sweet. We're like, and what's your question? But there was just a lot of acknowledgement of the way that we are way showing and leading and role modeling, and people just wanted us to know that the work that we're doing really makes a difference in their lives. And so whether this is your first introduction to us or not, we hope to make a difference for you. And then the questions were pretty much broken down into jealousy and conflicts and, family. There's a lot of how do I meet other poly people, and of course, scheduling. That's a big one. So we're going to save the jealousy for the end of the call to keep that like dessert towards the end so we can really dive into that. And I'd like to just dive into meeting poly people. I've got a few questions, like Raj wants to know, like what's most important, when meeting people? Is it that the body connection, the soul connection, the spirit connection? And I think it's a good question when you're writing your profile if you're going to meet people online. But the question I'm going to open up, it's kind of a synthesis. Shane, Christine, Nick, Ozone, they all want to know, like, how do I find poly people to date? Or if I'm already poly, how do I find new candidates to start a bigger family? And how, and how do you know if they're really poly? So as a general combined question, let's start, Reid, with your advice on this one.
Okay, thank you. Well, the first thing I would say for people is rather than trying to find poly people to date, I would start off with finding poly community to surround yourself with. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves when we're like scoping out people for relationships, and there's a lot less pressure when you're scoping people out for friendships and community, because when we go into dating mode, if somebody's not a good fit for you, you just kind of, I think unintentionally or subconsciously, kick them out of the pile of community, whereas when you're looking for community, it can be a lot more inclusive. And what you end up doing is you end up expanding your social network. And in that social network, the person that you're talking to may not be suitable for dating, but they may know somebody or have a friend who eventually ends up being a better fit for you to date. So, when you surround yourself with community, then also if you're having trouble finding people to date, you're not so lonely because you have friends and people to go do activities with, and you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people. So that way the starvation and the feeling alone and feeling like a freak hopefully doesn't, hit as hard or at all. And then once you build that kind of foundation of community, then inside of that, I think the next piece is for you to get really clear for yourself to the extent that you can, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you've tried it. Really get clear with the kind of poly or what your poly style is, so that you can, interview or audition or communicate with the people that you're considering dating to see if you're a good fit. Because early on when I came out poly and kind of figured out, oh my God, there's this whole thing called polyamory, if you just knew what the word meant, I wanted to date you. And that was problematic because I was dating people that, while they were poly, were still horrible fits for me to be dating. So I would kind of, structure it like that. Seek community, build community, surround yourself with community. Talk amongst your community members, what is poly for you? What works, what doesn't work? And start forming your own idea of what you think your poly style is. And then, because you've been talking to people about poly styles and you've been figuring out your own, then you can start selecting people that are a good fit for you and people that you're attracted to, rather than just going through a pile of potential date people and dating them to figure out whether you're a good fit. I like to front load the process a lot more.
That's brilliant, Reid. I'm excited about that. It points to kind of a paradigm shift from the singles dating kind of like practice to actually more of a tribal mentality. What do you have to add to that, Diana? What would you like to comment on?
Well, I absolutely second what Reid said, and I was going to say something really similar. I hostess a group in New York, Polyamory Cocktails, which is kind of a relaxed networking gathering at a lounge downtown in New York, and there's a similar group like that in Chicago, Chicago Poly Cocktails. And I often hear from people a frustration that I went to one poly meetup or one poly gathering and I didn't meet anybody, or there was this one creepy guy, and so I give up. It's not working. And I think there really needs to be kind of a persistence about building poly community, and that doesn't happen overnight. I think going to events more than once, trying out different events in your city if you're fortunate enough to have one, or meeting other people online and starting your own event, going to poly conferences, getting advice about poly, and surrounding yourself by people who are doing poly well is a great way to meet poly people without that pressure of immediately starting to date people. And in terms of how to approach people, I think that kind of less pressured tactic can also really work effectively to meet somebody just with an openness about who they are and what brought them to a poly meetup, for instance, rather than right away asking them for a date. I think might be a more effective strategy, especially with men approaching women.
Great. I'm gonna kind of dovetail this question. We got a few questions about at what point do I start to, like, let's say you do meet somebody or multiple people, at what point do I introduce them to each other? Because it's that question, I'm going to see who asked it. Oh, I've got Elizabeth. Oh my gosh, Elizabeth, Tanya. Henry, you know what I feel like is Mr. Rogers talking to my preschoolers, but I've got all these great names and all these great questions. But basically, I had two questions come in. And one is, at what point do I introduce my lovers to each other? And then there was this follow-up question, which is, you know, at what point do I introduce my lovers to my family? And since you do a lot of like family mediation, Diana, I'm curious what you have to say about, you know, bringing people into more of a family than not just meeting them.
Absolutely. I work as a family mediator with many different poly families or poly primary couples to make sure that they have agreement about the way that they want to do poly, meeting families, meeting other partners, making safer sex agreements, even just deciding to have children or share finances. And when I'm doing that, in terms of meeting family first, I think that it's very important, if poly people have children, to be aware that it can be useful to let grandparents, to let your own parents know that you're poly if your child will be meeting other partners and lovers in your life, because sometimes grandparents react with a lot of fear that the grandchildren are being exposed to something inappropriate. So if you have a relationship with your own parents and family, and you have children, and your children will be meeting your lovers, I think it's a really useful thing to have your own family hear about the fact that you're poly from you rather than from a secondhand source. And I think that often helps to prevent family conflict. There have been some really rare cases, but terrible ones, in which grandparents have fought for custody of their grandchildren because the parents of the child are poly, and the grandparents are afraid that children are being exposed to something inappropriate. In terms of actually meeting partners, I think it really depends what kind of relationship you have with your parents. Some people, some adults might see their parents just a few times a year and not be particularly close. If your biological family is a really important part of your life and people you're regularly in touch with, I think it can be a really nice thing to introduce your chosen family and the people that you're choosing to have be a big part of your life. I've really appreciated that personally because my parents are elderly, and I spend a lot of my time and effort as an only child helping to take care of them. And my lovers are people who have more time than my primary partner, and patience in some cases, to be with them and to help me clean out their house so they can go to a nursing home, to spend time with them, to bring them laughter, to be pen pals with them. And that's been a really beautiful part of my life and connection. By doing polymedia, I had to come out to my parents, and it has been difficult in some cases because, you know, with elderly parents, it's been very hard for them to understand. But ultimately, I'm really grateful that I've been able to be open about my life. So that would be my my answer about biological family and interesting partners. I don't think there's one answer. In terms of introducing partners to each other, I think that I like for that to happen fairly early on if people are going to be an important part of my life. I think if you've gone on just maybe 1 or 2 dates and you're not sure if you're going to see the person again, perhaps it's less important. But some people choose to do that at the point at which they're going to become more sexual with the person. For instance, if you have a primary partner, the primary partner might want to hear what that person's safer sex practices are and their testing status. I think that different partners meeting each other can be a really powerful way to demystify who this other person is. And if you don't meet the other partner, it's really easy to build them up in your mind to imagine that they're this incredibly sexy and charismatic force who wants to steal your partner away and doesn't respect you. I think it's very easy to kind of build up a mythology. And then you meet the person, and if they've smiled at you, you've had a conversation, you have a sense for them, I feel like that can often really go a long way toward feeling a sense of mutual respect. And that's something that's very important for me in my relationships, that anybody I'm going to have an ongoing relationship with needs to meet my primary partner. And part of that is making sure that they're not just okay with poly in theory, but they're really okay with it in practice, and it makes it more real for people.
Excellent. Good. I'm going to ask Reid the kind of corollary follow-up question. Dee wants to know, like, when you introduce your main, this is how Dee words it, okay, when do you introduce your main to a secondary partner? What if at first the partners like each other in a V situation, but later they don't? So in this follow-up, I'm looking for some of that deeper conflict resolution. Reid, what would you say to Dee?
Well, the first thing I would start off with is, I mean, if you're dating people that are good, that kind of are good fits for you poly-wise, then it's not so much an anxiety kind of like, oh my God, when do I introduce them? But when you are fairly certain that somebody's going to be a secondary, it really becomes a question of, hey guys, when do you want to meet each other? And so if it's a really big deal for people to meet each other, you may just want to take that into consideration, that may not be the best. Like that means you guys need to have a little bit more conversation about stuff and figure out what's the problem or where's the anxiety with meeting each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's not like it's the end of the world. It's just like it's not something you should be fretting horribly over, because you should be dating people who maybe they're not great at poly, but they're not actively avoiding difficult conversations or weird situations. I wish upon everybody that you date people with that kind of emotional IQ. And, if you happen to be somebody in the poly community who loves dating newbies and midwifing them through their first poly experiences, well, just understand that's going to be part of the challenge, is you're dating people that are cutting their teeth on your relationship, and you just need to be more patient with them. But you're always moving towards more conversation, not less. And that can be misconstrued in some ways, because people are like, oh my God, like, we're fine. I don't need to meet your secondary unless you really need me to meet them. And that's more of a sign of somebody who doesn't have a problem meeting anybody, but just doesn't really need to meet them unless they need it. And that's a very different situation than somebody who's trying to avoid meeting your other lovers, or somebody who's very adamant about don't ask, don't tell. As far as the V situation goes, unless you can only have a V where everybody, sleeps in the same room, and, you guys all have 3 toothbrushes sitting in the bathroom. Let your partners like each other to the extent that they like each other, and enjoy that you're in a relationship where people love you for who you are and don't require that would be like requiring all your cousins to love each other and always be okay and want to hang out. Like, let people develop the friendships and the loverships that are a good fit for them, and let those relationships rise to their natural level. But the biggest thing for me is watching out for people avoiding conversations and avoiding awkwardness, because that kind of awkwardness and avoidance will only breed and get weirder and wonkier as time goes on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think if I read between the lines of what you're saying, it's like a deep value of leaning into the uncomfortable, because that's where our growth edge is. And that one of the kind of values in poly is to be growth-minded and to be looking for the breakthroughs, even if there's difficult conversations that have to be waded through in order to get to the more love. Yeah, and so I'm just also going to add that a big part of the practice, regardless of your geometry, whether you're in a V or a triad or you're new to it or your experience at it, we're all always looking for right relation, which is to say, what do I and this person before me, like, how do we bring out the best in each other? Can we look for the love? What is it that we have to share? And we move towards that, and then the places where we don't fit, we just sort of accept, oh, okay, we're not sexually compatible. Okay, well, maybe we don't need to spend a lot of time together if it's not natural, and just to stay in right relation and to do that dance. And I love Dee's question, because just because you found a perfect V doesn't mean it's going to stay like that. We're all going to evolve and grow, and sometimes we grow apart, and to have acceptance about that. Great. So I'm going to move on to some of the other, we're going to take one more conflict resolution-oriented question. So here's a difficult one, and that is, okay, so when you're having a poly problem, there's so many great questions here. I apologize. Like, we have, okay, so Jason wants to know, this is a good one. Can a poly relationship work if one of the partner has rules and limitations and the other one has no limits and, practices free love? So can it work, Diana?
I think that's a great question. I think that as long as both partners are comfortable having different kinds of restrictions, that can work. So the person who's practicing free love, if one person is okay with free love, they need to be willing to have the restrictions of the other partner. As long as they're both okay with that, then that can work well. I've worked with many different families to work out their poly arrangements, and even some primary couples in which one considers themselves monogamous by orientation and the other considers themselves polyamorous by orientation. Some people think that being polyamorous or monogamous is part of who we are, an orientation like being gay, lesbian, bisexual. So in those kinds of couples, they might agree that, okay, one of us is going to be able to date other people and the other one isn't, and then just really negotiate and communicate about what boundaries there are on that. One example of something that I really helped them negotiate was, okay, the person who is monogamous in this couple is the breadwinner of the family. So when the other one takes other people out on dates, who is paying for that? Are you going to be subsidizing this person taking other people out on dates? Are you comfortable? Does that mean you have to be a separate budget? How do you feel about that? What safer sex practices do you request? Do you want to meet the other people? How comfortable are you with your partner going on frequent dates? How often do you want a date night for yourself versus with other people? What will you be doing while your partner's on dates? Are you okay with alone time or other social time? So I think really it's just the practice of communicating. And I think it's very common that in some couples, one person will want to hear about the juicy details of a date. With my partner, Ed, when I have a date with somebody, he often wants to hear what all the juicy details about what happened and what's going on and where am I at with this person. He's not really as interested in hearing about what safer sex practices we use, because he trusts me to be incredibly hardcore about making sure that I'm practicing safer sex to our standard. When he has a date, I don't really want to hear the juicy details. I just want to kind of hear, you know, did you have a nice time? Great. What kinds of sex acts did you do? Did you use protection? Great. And so the way that we communicate about what we're doing with other people is different. And I think that works fine for us.
Yeah, and I think you're pointing out, and I'm going to actually ask Reid the same question, by the way, Reid. I think this that there's a lot of mileage here. But I do want to say, you know, you and Ed on the front of having agreements are a lot more aligned than perhaps someone who is willing to have agreements and someone who's not at all. And similarly, you know, the example of someone who comes to you to get, you know, to have agreements be moderated, even if they're really different, they're already coming to you, which means that they're willing to even have that deep of a conversation that they'd seek third party. So I love your answer, which is, yeah, it can work. We just need to find where we overlap and find where it's a win-win. But I'm going to challenge Reid to say, what if you have someone who wouldn't even be willing to get third party, that they just really believe in free love? I don't want any rules. I don't want to work on any agreements. I simply want, you know, the freedom to follow my heart in every moment and not be accountable to, you know, your limitations around that. What would you say to that kind of extreme, Reid?
I would tell them to have a great life. I mean, that's like starting a parenting relationship with somebody who's like, you know what, I want to be a father or mother, but I want to have no responsibilities. Like, I think somebody like that is, they have boundaries. They're either just completely not aware of them, and when they do get aware of them, it'll be because something happened on the other person's end around their self-expression, and then the person with no boundaries gets super pissed off. And they're the one who's supposed to have no boundaries. So why are you putting boundaries on me, man? The first place to start with it, though, if you actually want to entertain that kind of relationship, for the person with no boundaries, don't date people who need a lot of boundaries and agreements. You're out of integrity. You're going to piss them off. You're not going to make them happy. I don't care how awesome they are. For the person who needs boundaries and agreements, why are you dating the person that needs all this freedom? Like, stop it. Like, you're setting yourselves up for a lot of work to begin with. I don't think it's pragmatic. What everybody needs to do, regardless, is come up with a shared intention, a shared agreement around why you guys even dating each other, why you guys even in a relationship in the first place. When you come up with a shared intention for your relationship, and by shared intention, I mean the thing that no matter how pissed off you both are at each other, it's a place, it's a little island in the middle of the rough emotional seas that both of you absolutely can agree on, no matter what. And the example I use is, you know, for people that are parents, even if they're getting divorced, a lot of parents, you can get to agree, you know what, no matter what happens to our relationship, we're going to be committed to being the best co-parents that we can for our children. Most people with kids can kind of agree, like that's no matter what we're fighting over, there's this one place that's, you know, sacrosanct, that's sacred, and that we both agree to no matter what. Figure out what that shared intention is for your relationship, like why you guys are even doing this, so that no matter how upset you guys get at each other, there's a common ground that you can come back to. And I can't tell you what your shared intention is. You guys have to figure that out for yourselves, but it's also going to begin with the individuals figuring out why are you even dating or why are you even having a relationship in the first place, regardless of the person. Like, what's your purpose for having a relationship? And then, you know, figure out that shared common ground, because because that will always be the place you guys can both retreat to get grounded. But, you know, somebody who needs no boundaries to really feel alive and in the, you know, in their body and in their life's expression should be dating somebody who probably doesn't need boundaries either, because you guys will fight a lot less, and vice versa. That's my 2 cents.
That's beautiful. I think this is a deep one, and it comes up often. And I also want to point out that there's there's something similar when somebody comes to me and they're like, I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to be held accountable. I feel like you have too many rules, too many agreements, too much communication even, and or too much processing is usually how they say it. And when I look at what their practice is, I say, wait, you're actually single. You're not poly. You're single. You just want to date whoever you want. And you're still, in a lot of ways, they're still either just afraid of commitment or they don't want, it's not like, oh, I want to build a relationship, because what a relationship is built on is communication. And to some degree, there's agreements, whether it's how often we see each other or when we show up, or but you know, first build a relationship, and then to be poly, you've got the potential to build multiple relationships. And so I just want to make that real big distinction between being single and being in free love. And free love we'll leave for another telecall, but it really is an enlightened way of relating that transcends, you know, that you have so many relationship agreements, and you have a deep trust and understanding with all those relationships that you can actually hold yourself totally autonomous and trust your partners to do the same. But that is not the same as just being single and doing what you want and not taking into consideration what your other partners need. So an important distinction and a really juicy topic, and something that we'll be exploring a lot more at Polypalooza, because we actually have a whole segment on free love versus polyamory, you know, rules and agreements and standards, and we've got some best practices for people on that that I can't wait to impart, because I feel like it's revolutionary stuff that's not taught anywhere else, which is one of the big themes. Did you want to add something, Reid?
Yeah, I you know, my spider sense is tingling, my spidey sense. I just want to say for people on the call, because I don't know that I agree, Kamala, completely with your definition of free love. What I kind of come at relationships in general, because you can look at polyamory, like my sister-in-law has all these friends of hers from college, and they see each other several times a year. Like, they probably see each other more than you and I see each other every year. They just don't sleep together. And they have agreements that are freeing for their friendships because they have similar agreement needs. And so the freeness, to me, from my perspective, has less to do with how evolved or enlightened you are as to whether are you actually partnering with people who have similar wants, needs, and desires and self-expressions, so that there's less friction. And the less friction is what's freeing and expansive and spacious, in my opinion. So I just wanted to throw that in there for people who are, you know, who are listening.
Yeah, and I appreciate the, you know, the differences, because I want to geek out with you about what free love is for me. It's something that I'm, you know, at the core of free love is a radical responsibility, and agreements is not one of them. Having high standards is another. But this is something that I want to go into depth with you and others about at Polypalooza. But I do agree that your, you know, sister's example is about partner selection. And I think we, you know, Diana, you and I can all agree that, like, who you choose to partner with can create more ease based on how aligned you are versus, you know, if you want to find someone who's radically different than yourself, you've got to be enrolled in, okay, personal growth through our differences. But you know, the issue that's been brought up on this call about, about can a person with agreements be with someone who doesn't want any, and the answer really ranges, and it depends both on partner selection and how much work are you willing to do, and whether or not you're both willing to find the win-win. So we'll leave it at that, and then we'll leave the discussion about free love. We'll roll up our sleeves and get into that more while we're soaking in the hot tubs at Polypalooza.
Agreed.
Okay,
And
good.
on the free love versus agreements panel, which I'm really excited about at
Yay.
Polypalooza, to be on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the ones that Diana's going to be heading up. She'll be the main facilitator on that panel. So what we're going to be doing in this segment is talking a little bit about this, what I see as a historic and a revolutionary retreat. I want to invite everyone on the call to seriously consider it. There's a month left, and even if you've said to yourself, no, I can't go, or that just sounds too hedonistic, or is it all a big sex party, or, money or time, whatever has stopped you from saying yes before now, I want you to suspend that for a moment and do a thought experiment with us. And later you can look at the realities of whether it works for you to come this year or next year or sometime in the future. But let's imagine for a moment that, that you said yes to Polypalooza. What that would look like is coming out to Desert Hot Springs, which is, again, you use the term oasis, but it's this phenomenal natural healing hotel. We're doing a whole hotel takeover, and they're like luxury rooms, and everything's taken care of for you. So you don't have to cook or clean. You get fed vegetarian, like hot, delicious meals, and everybody stays on the hotel together. So it's an immersive experience for really what's like 5 days and 4 nights. So it's this 4-night journey. And during that journey, we've got the top love experts on some of the most heated and juicy topics. And during the day, we'll be expressing the cutting edge of what all of us are just learning through practicing really high-level polyamory with many multiple lovers. And you'll get to see an actual family. You'll get to become part of our family. Like I said, I have a dozen lovers who are all going to be there putting this event on for you, but also there to meet you, play with you, support you. We're all extraordinary coaches and counselors, and if something comes up for you, you can get alone time by the pool or a chat during one of the meals, or you could just ask for, hey, let's have a 15-minute date. I want to get to know you. And then one of the other core practices, so we've got all these excellent workshops on not just jealousy, but agreements, but also like kink and tantra, various expressions of polyamory. And so we've got great topics, great cutting-edge teachings, but we also have a daily forum. And the forum is this vulnerable, real time to express yourself. And most people would rather die than speaking in public. Public speaking is really challenging. But we have technologies which even the shyest person who's socially awkward, who feels like, oh my God, I don't want to go to Polypalooza because everyone's young and beautiful and how am I going to fit in? It's like we have a practice that will melt the differences between us and you and them, so that it's like a matter of you feeling celebrated and welcome enough that you can do some public speaking in what's called the forum. Everything's, of course, optional, but I tell you, this is one of the most transformative things, and we do this every day. And by doing it in repetition, it's like peeling layers and layers of negative programming, like everything that stops you from being fully expressed. We just peel those layers away so that we get closer to your essence, which is love and honesty and freedom. And so we go through this laboratory of like, how do we let go of everything that's not who we really are? And we even, baptize ourselves in the healing waters, and then we party at night in a really safe way. We experiment at play parties, and if you've not had group sex experiences, this is a great place to have it. If you've not seen it and you just want to watch it, it's a great place to be a sacred voyeur. It's a great place to get connected with yourself. You don't have to be sexual to be part of a play party, but you will learn all kinds of amazing new practices and techniques that will enrich your sex life forever. We also have theater and dance and music, which is what makes it a festival. It's like we do the hard work. We really confront our demons and our programming and our egos, but then we do it in a context of celebration, so it never feels hard. It always feels like, wow, I can handle this. Wow, I'm so supported. And then by the end of the journey, you will belong to a tribe of lovers, and you'll have a lifelong membership to something extraordinary, and you know that you've got friends that you can call on, even if they live across the country, friends that you'll have forever. I mean, it's a really extraordinary bonding experience. So that's my, invitation to you. And whatever, resistance that comes up around the date, I'd say change your schedule to make it happen. The price, it's an all-inclusive ticket for $897, which honestly, I cannot imagine a better investment that you'll make in your love life. This one investment will change your love life forever. So $897, which includes rooms and food and tuition and parties, everything, is an absolute deal. Considering that afterwards you will really be liberated, in your love life and what's possible in polyamory. So, whether it's money or time or just fear, I invite you to really look at your calendar, your finances, or get some support from any of us so that you can get your butt, out there and see what happens and see who you become. So, with that said, I know Reid has been with us at Tantrapalooza for the last 3 years at least, and I'm curious, Reid, if you'll say a little bit about how that's personally touched or changed your life.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways I'm sad that Tantrapalooza is over, but I'm excited for Polypalooza. For me personally, just getting to deepen community, get to meet people I probably never would have met before, because there are people that are living in places that I don't normally teach classes. So actually getting to hang out and break bread and chat in the hot tubs, like just the social bonding for me is really great, and to be able to spend several days with people and geek out and think about things and feel like I'm not alone or a freak, or maybe I am a freak, but I'm not an alone freak. The idea that like all the shame and the worry that I carried growing up as I started to figure out who I was, like, oh my God, no one's going to love me, people won't like me, everyone will run screaming. Counteracting a lot of those deep fears by being able to hang out with people and get to know people and say hi every morning and spend more time than just, the kinds of time you get to spend with somebody when you go to a 2 or 4 hour workshop. And even just the social events and the parties and the celebrating, for me, especially because I work at my laptop so much, and like right now I'm actually talking to you guys from an airport, like I'm flying today to go teach someplace else. Like to have one place to kind of settle down for a couple of days and unwind and relax and play with people emotionally, physically, intellectually, like that for me is priceless. So, I've gotten so much in so many different ways from Tantrapalooza, and I only look and expect the same, if not more, from Polypalooza.
Yay. Yay. So please go to polypalooza.com and register there, and or look at the details and send me any questions. Let's get you, whatever you need to enroll. If not this year, then next. I'm sure this is the beginning of a new tradition. But as promised, I want to end the call in talking about jealousy. And we're going to do one of these really powerful laser teachings. I'm going to ask Reid and Diana to crystallize one of the most powerful jealousy tools because, like I said, most of the questions that I got were really on that front. And by the way, jealousy is something that we'll be going into great detail on at Polypalooza. But the Monica, Sylvia, Larry, Ken, Kristen, who asked about those feelings of insecurity and competition and partners who are freaking out, and how do you be happy when you're meeting someone else's lover? I'm just going to ask Reid and Diana to choose one of the most powerful jealousy teachings, and that'll be their closing notes for the call, because this is really helpful to all of us. We all want to know more about how to manage our jealousy, and I think Diana started off by saying, hey, this doesn't ever go away. It's just how graceful and masterful you become at managing it when it arises. And so let's start with Diana.
Sure.
Good. So we'll do it. It'll be like three minutes of your most powerful jealousy teaching.
All right, let's do it. So I think that jealousy is a powerful tool for personal growth and growth in relationship. I think that rather than just react against jealousy, the traditional response being, I'm jealous, stop everything, to really invite that feeling in for tea, to take some time to really think, where is this feeling coming from for me? To be able to identify what's going on for you and realize it's not just one blunt emotion. Am I feeling a scarcity of resources? Is my partner not spending enough time with me compared to somebody else? Do I feel like somebody's getting something that I'm not getting? Are they taking somebody else on vacation and not me, or something? Having some experience I'm not having? Are they doing something that is going to be infringing on one of my relationships? Are they trying to date my sister or my best friend or my roommate? Or is this triggering just an old insecurity? Am I afraid that this other person is going to be chosen over me? And there's really a lot of difference between those different perspectives, and I think inviting those feelings in and being able to identify, okay, here's where I want to set a boundary. I want to set a boundary around perhaps relationships that would infringe on me, such as please don't date my roommate or my sister. Or I want to set a boundary around making sure that we have a date night. Sometimes I hear, my just became poly and my husband's dating somebody else now 5 days a week and I hardly ever see him. Well, doing anything 5 days a week, whether it's golf or playing video games, could be a bit much. Being able to set boundaries when appropriate, but then when insecurity is the issue, to take that as a moment of growth and be able to talk to your partner about it, not in a way that is blaming, but saying, I'm feeling really vulnerable about this and I'm feeling insecure about it. Could we talk about it? And for them to practice being able to hear that and not respond defensively, but maybe give you validation. And I've found that a lot of my jealousy has really melted away by being able to do that and getting affirmation from my partner. And now it feels incredibly empowering to loan out my partner to beautiful women and men and have complete confidence that he'll come back to me because we've spent time and invested in ourselves and our relationships to process it and to understand where that comes from and shed those insecurities.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Really touching and clear.
Thank you.
So welcome it in, and then make strategies only after understanding where it comes from. Excellent. What would you have to add to that as your closing notes, Reid?
Oh yeah, I mean, what I'll say is basically think of jealousy like it's asthma. For those who have asthma or know people who have asthma, asthma education focuses around like learning what your triggers are, so that you know how to avoid having a jealousy attack. Which then, in a culture that basically teaches us that jealousy is insurmountable and you can never win, like you being able to literally understand how your emotional triggers operate so that you can give yourself, emotionally, quote-unquote, breathing room, to go with the asthma analogy. And then as you start to know your triggers, and the way that I frame it is, jealousy is this 8-armed octopus. And Diana already mentioned some of the arms of the octopus: insecurity, feelings of loss, things like that. Once you start to realize what the arms are for you and which ones, when they get pulled, trigger an attack, then you can start preemptively asking for the needs that are underneath those triggers, and get them sourced either from your partners or from your community. Another reason why having a poly community can be really useful, so that then you're fortifying yourself in a way that those needs are pretty much, the tank is full on your needs, so that it's even harder for the jealousy to be triggered. Because people who are in relationships that feel secure, feel, healthy and nurtured, and they feel connected to, those kinds of relationships, people have a tendency not to have jealousy triggered in the same ways. So look at jealousy like it's asthma. Understand that you have particular arms of that octopus that, when tugged, trigger your jealousy. And then understand that underneath all those triggers are needs that you could be getting fulfilled in ways that will lessen the jealousy, or kind of stave it off altogether until your tank runs down low again and you need to fill up those needs again.
Beautiful. This is such a vital teaching that needs to be practiced. It's like, in theory we can understand and we can dissect jealousy as this 8-armed asthmatic green-eyed beast, but it's about practicing it when those triggers arise. And again, our hope, we have a whole kind of focus, a team of brilliant minds focused on jealousy at Polypalooza, but it's only as applicable as we can ask what it applies to you. And so a lot of our work is very interactive. And so I'm going to ask you, in my closing statement for the call, the way to get the most out of this call with Reid and Diana and myself is to ask yourself, what applies to me most directly, and what can I apply in my life? So, first thing is, if you're called to learn more from Diana, myself, and Reid, really seriously consider Polypalooza. But whether or not you're coming to Polypalooza, I want you to reflect on everything that you learned from us today and say, wow, what could I do differently? How could I show up, as a lover, more self-aware, more responsible, and to make that change. Start practicing that right away, because we don't want to get off the phone and feel like we had a juicy chat with all these stimulating, titillating, and even, like this conversation that feels like foreplay, and then to feel like you didn't go off and actually, consummate by applying something you learned here today. That'd be a waste of our time. So your homework is to take 1 or 2 teachings and to commit to taking action on that this week, and then send us an email or a Facebook or some feedback. We really enjoyed our time with you here today, and we look forward to hearing what effects that it has in the field and in your lives. So thank you, Reid. Thank you, Diana. It's been a pleasure.
Yay.
Thank you. I cannot wait for more. I'm so excited about Polypalooza.
We are too. We are too. So we love you all, and we look forward to hearing from you. Blessings.
Blessings. Bye-bye.